34. Man's heart stands under the fire sign. The flames of the fire press upward. When both eyes are looking at things of the world, it is with vision directed outward. Now, if one closes the eyes and reversing the glance, directs it inward and looks at the room of the ancestors, that's the backward flowing method. The energy of the kidneys is under the water sign. When the desires are stirred, it runs downward, is directed outward, and creates children. If in the moment of release, it is not allowed to flow outward, but is led back by the energy of thought so that it penetrates the crucible of the creative and refreshes heart and body and nourishes them, that also is the backward flowing method. Therefore it is said, the way of the elixir of life depends entirely on the backward flowing method.
You think Tantric Yoga is tied into this concept here?
Seems to be an allusion to that.
Tantric Yoga. You want to comment further?
Well, I have a note that says, if the act of love expresses union and integration rather than a excretory disintegrative release. So what is the act of love? Is it just a release, or is it a union? And it's saying that makes a difference what the consciousness is. When the desires are stirred, it runs downward, outward, creates children. If in the moment of release it is not allowed to flow outward. Now, I'm interpreting flow outward there. It simply means just a release. If rather that is an expression of love, then something different happened in the direction of the movement of the energy. It is the backward flowing instead of the other. It's the purposes, you see. It's back to what is the driving and culminating purpose.
I've shaken up a lot of young people trying to urge them to have meditation and prayer prior to intercourse, and telling them that what a difference it will make. And it blows their mind, some of them. It really... Now, that's not enough, of course. The ideals and the purposes and the goals of a total love relationship have to be builded much more carefully than just a quick meditation to sort of stimulate everything. But it can be part of, or made part of, a very, very wonderful experience. The circulation of the light is not only a circulation of the seed blossom of the individual body, but it is even a circulation of the true, creative, formative energies. It is not a momentary fantasy, but the exhaustion of the cycle, for instance, as soul migrations, of all of the eons. Therefore, the duration of breath means a year, according to a human reckoning, and 100 years measured by the long night of the 9 paths of reincarnation. What it's saying here, I think, is that we are dealing with something that is not just of one life, but the meditation processes and techniques are part of a total movement and total release of man from his involvement in the earth plane, and a return to God consciousness of the whole self. You don't do this in a life, in a minute, so to speak, any more than you have a complete change of heart in a minute that will always last. But it's the process of working with this consistently that brings about a movement toward the total change that is important for us all.
This expression, it is not a momentary fantasy. Now, that I think refers specifically to your waking conscious experience during the 15 minutes of meditation. And a lot of people use that as the criterion or standard by their meditation. They say, I've been meditating for several months now and nothing has happened. And what they're saying is that they haven't had a dramatic momentary fantasy. Meditation is not a momentary fantasy of having some kind of experience. You know, around the 69, 70, when TM came in and drugs were about, you might hear the expression, I don't have to take drugs now anymore, I can get high on meditation. Well, they missed the whole point. The point is not to have a momentary high or a momentary fantasy. That's not what we're talking about here. Backing up to an earlier sentence, that introductory sentence reminds me of a reading in which someone asked, what's the difference between Jesus and the Christ? And the reading said, Jesus is the pattern that Christ is the power. Now, yesterday we talked about that mediating point where the energy moves into manifestation at the point of light. And as mediator, the Christ, which is the power, coming into manifestation in the pattern. And so, it says the circulation of the light is not only a circulation of the seed blossom of the individual body. Now, I think that means the pattern within us, the law within, made in the image of God. That's the Christ pattern, the archetype of the self. It's not only that pattern, but it is even a circulation of the true creative formative energies. You see, there's a pattern and a power that is there. The seed blossom and the creative energies.
I think, Herb, that what I said about the other energy up here, that it picks up this light from outside, picks up this energy. God's constantly pouring His energies out on man, His love. And it's available to us. But we have to get to the consciousness of the Christ in order to obtain that. And when it mixes there, then you've got that light. And that is the thing that spills over. Then, as the Bible says, thy cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow thee all the days of thy life. This is the psalm that we're all familiar with, and the cup is the symbol of that pituitary center.
But remember, if the text says the light is easy to move but difficult to fix. And I think some people have this experience, the descent of the light, but there hasn't been the backward flowing movement in which their own energies have been raised up through these centers to meet them.
To meet it.
And so you can have, say, a Holy Spirit experience or a white light experience of the Christ, but it is not necessarily that kind.
That you get caught up in.
Integrated.
The prodigal son hasn't returned home yet.
Hasn't said, I will arise.
Yeah, God's out there yelling for us, but we haven't gone back yet.
Now, Mark and I introduce our book on meditation with a little sentence from the readings that says, a day in the house of the Lord or a moment in His presence should be worth 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years, in the carnal forces. See how this sentence says? Therefore, the duration of a breath means a year, according to human reckoning, and 100 years. If you really want to take into consideration that we are 10 million years old, we've been in the earth plane that long, most of us, some of us, then it's saying that a breath of this kind of experience puts to rest 100 years with respect to the continuing return of the incarnations. Now, I think those are symbolic and literal too. I have a feeling there's a literal measure of time here.
No, what I think we ought to get straight here at this point is meditation, as Herb just said it, but let me say it again in another way, is not an experience. That's not what you're looking for. It's the changed life. It's the translating it into love and activity in the earth. It's the change that takes place in you. The ability to forgive, the kindness and thoughtfulness, all of the fruits of the Spirit that begin to manifest as a result of the meditative process. Not an experience. You're not headed for a warm feeling or a brilliant light or something just to happen to you for the moment. And so we can't focus on any one thing. It's what it does to you as a result that is really the result of the meditative state. And it's the total result in your life. Because gradually then the things that are in your way that you put there, the blocks, whether it's irritation and annoyance or impatience or I'm naming a few of mine, that you get rid of, that you gradually turn loose of, or your anger, or your fears, gradually. It's the change that takes place then so that you can begin to love and begin to care and begin to serve to the total capacity of your being at any given expression in the earth. Because we're all here for a job. We got a job to do. We are representing God in the earth. And it's that total representation that the meditative process brings about, not an individual experience at some point. It is so easy to make people psychic. You can have all kinds of experiences. We could push you under some pressure a little bit and actually induce all kinds of experiences, but it would tear you apart and open you up like a can of peas that would run all over the place, not help you. And what we're doing, what we're talking about, is a gradual spiritual change that can take place, and it's discipline, the regularity and the consistency and the ideals that have to be set to bring this about. I get sort of fervent about it and begin to yell and holler, so I'll back up.
Is it my turn?
It's your turn, I think.
After a man has the one sound of individuation behind him, he will be born outward according to the circumstances, and until his old age, he will never look backward. The energy of the light exhausts itself and trickles away. That brings the ninefold darkness of reincarnations into the world. In the book Ling Yin, it is said, by concentrating the thoughts, one can fly. By concentrating the desires, one falls. When a pupil takes little care of his thoughts and much care of his desires, he gets into the path of submersion. Only through contemplation and quietness does true intuition arise. For that, the backward-flowing method is necessary.
You're going to get the good paragraph. The Book of Secret Correspondence, it is said, release is in the eye. In the simple questions of the Yellow Rule, it is said, the seed blossom of the human body must be concentrated upward in the empty space. That's talking about the pituitary, this emptiness. This refers to it. Immortality is contained in this sentence, and also the overcoming of the world is contained in it. This is the common goal of all religions. Let me read that again, because that's a honey. Release. No, in the Book of the Secret Correspondences, it is said, release is in the eye. In the simple questions of the Yellow Rule, it is said, the seed blossom of the human body must be concentrated upward in the empty space. This refers to it. Immortality is contained in this sentence, and also the overcoming of the world is contained in it. This is the common goal of all religions. This is the freedom of man from that which he has created, which he has builded that blocks him. Dad says again and again in those readings, there is nothing between us and God but the self, but that which we have put there, that which we have built it. Meditation is the way of gradually you remove the memories of how you have expressed this selfishness. In time after time, the karmic patterns are gradually dissolved, and you begin to be able to, you move to this central point of stillness and silence, and that is the eye, the third eye, in other paragraphs here. You may want to comment on this, because
many of you may still have difficulty in shifting to the terminology of the readings that the pituitary is the third eye, because of many teachings suggest that to be the pineal. But if we think the pituitary as the third eye, and then remember that Jesus said, if your eye be single, the whole body can be full of light. Now, if the desire, or the eye, it's the motivation. I think literally our eyes and what we glance upon quickens different centers. But is the singleness a motivation? Now, notice this term, seed blossoms. Remember, the seven centers are drawn in Hinduism as being lotuses. So if we look at this, it says the seed blossoms of the human body must be concentrated upward in the inner empty space. All seven of these have different motivational potentials. The seed blossoms must be concentrated upward to the one center. Now, and then, if all of these get together, and there's the singleness of the eye, the one motivation, the one purpose, if your eye be single, then the whole body can be full of light.
Read that last one, and then we can break, because it's such a beauty.
The light.
This is the
not
paragraph.
in the body alone, nor is it only outside the body. Mountains and rivers and the great earth are lit by sun and moon. All of that is light. Therefore, it is not only within the body, Understanding and clarity, perception and enlightenment, and all movements of the Spirit are likewise this light. Therefore, it is not just something outside the body. The light flower of heaven and earth fills all the 1,000 spaces, but also the light flower of the individual body passes through heaven and covers the earth. Therefore, as soon as the light is circulating, heaven and earth, mountains and rivers are all circulating with it at the same time. To concentrate the seed flower of the human body above in the eye, that is the great key of the human body. Children, take heed. If for a day you do not practice meditation, this light streams out who knows whither. If you only meditate for a quarter of an hour, by it you can do away with the 10,000 eons and 1,000 births. All methods end in quietness. This marvelous magic cannot be fathomed.
That's a beautiful passage from it. Do you want to say anything about that? It's so beautiful. I hate to even comment on it. It says it so neatly.
It says if you only meditate a quarter of an hour. Well, it doesn't say a quarter of an hour daily. But I think it literally means a quarter of an hour. That if you could just bring yourself to get centered for one 15-minute period, it would make a difference. But then a quarter of an hour daily is something else. Well, did they have hours and a quarter of hours and so on back at that time? This is a term, I think, like 100 days, that refers to, my translation of a quarter hour, the Chinese text probably said a reasonable and not unreasonable length of time, something like that. You know, it's not that you just sit down and you say, I meditated, and you jump up. But it's not as though you have to sit there all day either. So there is a measure of time that I think feels right for you. And I think you'll begin to sense this as you meditate, that sometimes it takes you a little longer to get into it. Sometimes you can quickly move into it, and then you sort of know that it's over. Do you have that experience? And you don't just sort of sit there slavishly beyond that time because your alarm clock hasn't rung or the clock hasn't struck in the hall or something like that.
I think you get to a point, too, with meditation, if you work with it, that it's such a wonderful experience that you work with it and keep going with it. You can drop into a meditative state almost any time, anywhere. You seek it out. It's a beautiful experience. This next one, though, here, look at that one, because this is what we've been saying to you. Children, take heed. It's talking to us. If for a day, and it does go down to a day here, you do not practice meditation, this light streams out who knows whither. This is how we use the energies up through the activities of these other centers. The negative emotions get involved here. The emotion being something that between the mind and the body, that's built in the mind and relates to the body, built in the body relates to the mind and the activity. The emotional patterns that build up, and we store them in the cells, actually, of the glandular centers. And when we stimulate them, the energy streams out, and we use it. Where does it go? It's that business of wasting it. In all the energy we pour out on things, it doesn't amount to a hill of beans. It's not that important. So many of the things we talk about, so many of the things we spend time in doing, have no real meaning except the satisfaction of the self that we're busy and we're enjoying the release of the energy, whether it's a little irritation or whether it's a little self-pity or whatever it happens to be, a little sexual experience. I talked to somebody in there just a while ago that it was, the pictures started coming, and he did a kind of zoom lens on it, hoping there was somebody walking on the beach, and it might be a woman, without any clothes on. So he zoomed right in on it. Turned out to be an Arab, but it's pictures out of the unconscious. And you could sit there and watch these things indefinitely. They'd go on and on and on. In the end, you let them stream out. So the meditative state is the silence, and it's something else.
This paragraph 38 begins with, I think you could translate this to some of our discussion of where do you find God. The light is not entirely outside of the body, and yet it's not entirely in the body. And Yulin has mentioned this sense of a light descending, and yet there is also the raising of that. The readings say to think of God as being within only is to become an idol worshiper. And so we meet him within, and yet this force that we're talking about is not just within, it's outside. And this introductory statement, I think, is a statement of the oneness of all force. See how it goes? The light's not in the body alone, nor is it only outside the body. Mountains and rivers and the great earth are lit by sun and moon. All of that is light. Therefore, it is not only within the body. And it continues with the development of that.